Hey everyone, join me today while we learn how to do the cobblestone stitch. This is a simple stitch I use in a lot of my designs. It's just a 2-stitch repeat with a 2-row repeat, so a nice easy one with beautiful results. I love to play around and explore with different combinations of stitches, and this one I call the cobblestone stitch. You'll be able to find the written instructions for this stitch pattern as well as these helpful infographics over on the blog post on my website. The link will be in the description below. So let's get going. I'm going to be using Patons Canadiana yarn today. It is a worsted weight yarn, so it is a medium number 4 weight, and I'm going to use a 5mm hook. So we're going to start by creating our slip knot. So I loop the yarn around my finger, cross over in front, and I take the loop and I fold it down to create a pretzel. I take the bar that lies underneath and I pull it through the pretzel. That creates my knot, and then I just pull both ends, and then you can pull them apart to slip it up to the hook. You want it fairly snug on the hook, but you want it loose enough it moves around. You don't want to make it too tight or you won't get your hook through it. So we're going to go ahead and create our foundation chain. So I'm going to take my yarn and I like to wrap it around my fingers for tension, and I place my thumbs at the knot. So my thumb on the left hand is the one that helps control the tension. So it's really not this hand. This hand just takes the yarn through, creates the stitches. This one creates the tension. So now we're going to do the foundation chain. And this stitch requires a multiple of 2 plus 1. So I'm going to do 15 chain. That gives me a nice size swatch so that I can get a gauge measurement from it. So we're going to go ahead and create our 15 chains. So when I'm creating my chains, often I will get into a rhythm of creating 2 at a time. And that helps me also count. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I can go 10, 12, 14, and one more for 15. So there's my 15 chain. And then I need to chain one more to start my next row. So the first row is just going to be single crochet. So we're going to go into the second loop from the hook, putting our hook in, wrapping our yarn around, and creating our first single crochet. And we're going to do that all the way across. When I create my stitches, I usually just like to play around. I'm often just mixing up the stitches to see what I can get. So this particular one, the cobblestone stitch, I call it, just came about from playing around with the stitches. I really tend not to look at what stitches are already out there. So when I went to create this video, I thought I better make sure it doesn't already have a name, because I tend to name my stitches just so I can keep track of them, and I name them based on either what I'm working on at the time or what I think they look like to me. So I found a few that are kind of variations on this, like the even moss stitch and the cobble stitch, but neither of them are exactly the way I do this one. So I've named this one cobblestone. So we've got our first row now, single crochet, and we're going to finish off our last one and chain one. And then we're going to turn our work. And now we're on technically the wrong side of the work. And this is when the second row, which this pattern stitch is only 2 rows, which is nice and simple to remember. This is where the texture is going to happen. So our first stitch is going to be a single crochet. So we create our single crochet, and our second stitch is going to be a half double crochet. So you're going to wrap the yarn around the loop. You're going to insert the hook into under both of the loops of the stitch as normal. You're going to wrap the yarn around again. I just kind of lean it over with my hand. Pull through a loop. Now you've got 3 loops on the hook. Wrap the yarn around again and pull it through. That's your half double crochet. And then the next stitch will be a slip stitch. So I'm going to insert the hook in underneath both of the loops again. Wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and then you're going to continue and pull it through the loop on the hook. So that's your slip stitch. So again, we're going to work that across. So it's a half double crochet and a slip stitch. And we're going to do that all the way across, which is our multiple of 2. And you're not going to see the texture on this side. You're going to see it when we turn the work around on the right side. So the even moss stitch does this row every single row, but the stitch that I'm showing you, which I've named the cobblestone stitch, only does this row on the wrong side and does a single crochet row on the right side. And what I like about that is it's just easy to remember. Often when I'm crocheting, sometimes I like to have other stuff going on, like a movie or talking to people. And having that single crochet row is nice because I don't have to think when I'm working on that one. So you're down to your last 2 stitches. We're going to half double crochet in the second last stitch. And then the last stitch is going to be a single crochet. So we're always single crocheting on either edge. So we finish our single crochet, chain 1 and turn. And now you can see the texture happening. So we have this nice little lacy row across here. It's kind of a little ridge row. And the other stitch I said that this is similar to is cobble stitch, but cobble stitch uses, I believe, trebles and single crochets, so they're maybe more pronounced here. This is nice and subtle, and that's what I love about it. It's just a subtle texture for whatever you're working on. It doesn't speak too loudly. So we're going on to our 3rd row now, and we're back to a single crochet. So we're just going to do a little bit more. Go right ahead and single crochet across this row so you can get a better idea. The nice thing with the single crochet also is it really makes the ridges stand out more because you have a nice flat row in between each one. So they're going to line up with each other, which is also a nice thing. They'll create a nice little grid of texture. And they're also going to be these flat rows in between, which are the single crochet. Chain 1, and that was our right side row, and see how it's created this nice flat row above the texture. So we're going to turn around and go and do another wrong side row. So I'll give you an idea of what the texture looks like here. So we're going to start with a single crochet, and then our second stitch will be half double crochet, and we're just going to keep working our way across. And again, I used this thumb on my left hand side to keep the tension going. So I use it to pull on the fabric, so it's an even tension between my 2 hands. What it does is it makes sure that I'm not pulling too tight, and it makes sure that it's not too loose, because you want to enjoy the work you're doing, so you don't want to be pulling so tight you can't get the hook in, and you don't want to be so loose that everything's flopping all over the place. So we end again with a half double crochet and a single crochet. Chain 1. Turning your work again, we're back onto the right side, and now you can see how there's 2 rows of ridges with a nice space in between. And we'll finish this off with a single crochet row so you can get an idea, and then I'll show you what the finished swatch looks like. So just go ahead here and single crochet along. And when we get to our last stitch, single crochet in that, chain 1, and I'm just going to show you here how you have 2 beautiful ridges created by the half double crochet slip stitch on the wrong side, and then these nice little gaps in between, or a nice breath, I say, in between the textures, so that it gives it space. It gives the texture some space to breathe. I'll go ahead and we'll finish up the swatch, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. So now I have my finished swatch. You can see it here. I've done it up in a nice square so that I can get my stitch gauge off of this. It has this beautiful texture on the front, and then when I flip it over, you can get a good look at the wrong side here. The wrong side has a little bit of a decorative pattern to it, but it doesn't have any of that, the ridges. So it's a nice smooth back. The right side here has a delicate fabric. It's separated nicely by these single crochet rows. So you can make this stitch pattern out of just about any weight of yarn. I've used chunky weights before and it's worked just great. In this worsted weight, I like to make baby garments out of this. So you have the nice texture on the outside, so you get that pretty look. And on the inside, you get this nice smooth feel. And that's the cobblestone stitch pattern. It's simple to do with only 2-stitch repeat and 2-row repeat. So once you get the hang of it, it's easy to do without having to look at a pattern for it. You can find these pattern graphics over on the blog post for this particular stitch on my website. You can find the link down below in the description. So have fun with it, and thanks for joining me, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.